Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 7 o'clock, so it's time to open Cabinet for this evening. Welcome. Welcome to those who are joining us on live stream. We've got a fairly full agenda for this evening, so we will work our way through it as swiftly as possible. So the first item this evening is to accept any to receive any apologies. Do we have any?
No, none to report, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then the item 1 is the minutes of our last meeting from the 17th of May. Are there any comments, questions or amends that we need to deal with? No, in which case can I have somebody to propose? Thank you, Councillor Pitt. Somebody to second. Councillor Sanderson, are you happy then to vote so that I can sign them as a true record? All those in favour? Thank you very much. There you go. Thank you. That then takes us swiftly through into item 2, members' interest. Do members have any interest that they need to declare? Oh, Councillor Pitt.
So, Market Towns Programme of a Town Councillor for St Neots Town Council.
Thank you. And we have other St Neots Town Councillors round the... Oh, no, we don't have other St Neots Town Councillors. We have other St Neots Ward Councillors. Thank you. So just Councillor Pitt. Okay, thank you. In which case, can I move us on then to the Market Towns Programme and the summer update, which I think Councillor Wakeford, you're down to take us through.
I am, thank you, Chair, or Executive Leader, as you prefer. And as I commented at scrutiny, was it last week, the week before, given that we already know a lot of what's in the report, and this is less of an exciting one than some that I've brought to you over the past 12 months. I can probably be a bit briefer with it, but it is worth sort of stepping back. This is a year, to the meeting at least, if not the date since we first started bringing these through the committee process. These quarterly reports after our administration took over, and yeah, we are a long way from where we were in terms of the town centre improvements, what we used to call the transport improvements, but that's not helpful terminology. So the town centre improvements in St Neots, we have now completed the final designs and procurement of a contractor, and so we are on the verge of work starting, beginning of autumn, and that's going to make a very significant improvement to the middle of our one of our very important market towns in the district. The report touches on that. It touches on our comms plans as well, which was picked up in discussion at overview and scrutiny, in particular, as has been touched on, the need for replacement of the trees anyway, and the value of us getting ahead in terms of explaining why that is happening and what we're doing to improve and increase the number of trees as part of the programme of redevelopment of the town centre. The report also touches on the appointment of architects and technical advisors for the refurbishment of the Priory Centre in St Neots. What I couldn't confirm at scrutiny, but I can now that the legal standstill period has expired, is that AOC are the company who've been appointed. So we're looking forward enormously to working with them. The report takes us through the approvals that we secured via the combined authority for switching some of the unused unallocated monies we've talked about in previous quarters. And the report updates on the completion of the master plans for Huntingdon, Ramsey and St Ives, but we also touched on terminology in terms of those as well at the scrutiny panel, and talked about vision documents being perhaps more helpful language, because master plan implies something final that is going to happen, that is being planned in the more active sense. what of course the master plans are just a suite of options for potentially taking projects forward, as we've already been able to do in Ramsey. And there was at least one comment in support of that, a couple of comments, I think, in support of that changed terminology for us to use when publishing the master plans. Just touching on other aspects of overview and scrutiny discussion, as I've mentioned, there was particular discussion around comms and the trees for understandable reasons. We explained that the report didn't add much in terms of the work on the Old Falcon, but we are going to be revisiting that in private session, given the commercial confidentialities, in the next quarterly report in the autumn. And we did assure that work was quietly progressing on that along the lines that we set out previously. Otherwise, yeah, I think we can probably park that there and take any questions, Chair, if we have any.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wakeford. Do we have any questions? Councillor Davenport-Ray.
Do we have a timescale of when the final designs for the Market Square and the High Street will be available to the public to view?
Thank you. We're in the final stages of discussions with the Town Council to ensure that as critical stakeholders that they're fully aware of what's being put into the public domain, but also that we're taking advantage of any final impact from them around the most helpful ways of presenting that, because there's a lot in terms of the technical drawings, as colleagues will be aware. So within a matter of days or a couple of weeks on that, rather than any longer. It's the best I think I can say at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, thank you. Going off Councillor Davenport-Ray's question, so you're talking about St Neots Town Council. When will our residents know? I was actually talking to a residents today, and their comment was, what's happening with the Market Square? What's happening with our High Street? So I really am conscious that we need to get that out to our residents.
Indeed, Councillor Taylor, and the relevance of the reference to the Town Council there was in ensuring that they are appraised fully through their processes of what's then entering the public domain, and that we're making sure that we've taken advantage of any input around how we explain, how we set that out on our website, which absolutely is where we're going to put into the public domain for all our residents within the next couple of weeks, because it's been a very long time waiting, as St Neots colleagues will appreciate even better than me, merely sort of scrutinising here under the previous administration from afar, as it were, as a Huntingdon councillor. But we are, as we say, a matter of a couple of months from then work starting in the square. We will, of course, have a whole set of other conversations around managing those to minimise disruption and so on. But of course, it's a one-off disruption around the construction works to fit around then for the permanent benefit to the middle of St Neots.
Thank you. Councillor Pitt.
Thank you very much. Thanks for this report, Councillor Wakeford. So just to update a little bit further, so I was involved in the tender process and it was really exciting. I've never been so excited to read over 1,000 pages of PDF submissions about what could be achieved with the Priory Centre, and we were really spoilt for choice with the tenders that we received. So I'm really excited that AOC is now confirmed. I think they covered the theatre expertise with the multi-use space and also with the decarbonisation. They had those three kind of key pillars that are part of the sort of vision for that building, I hope. So that's really great to be involved in that. I think with regard to the town centre improvements, there's lots of moving parts to this. Obviously, the works that are about to be commissioned are I say relatively straightforward, and they're not really straightforward at all, but I'm just thinking about how we can best incorporate some of the other projects that are coming from the CPCA legacy funding, so the stage, the public art, and the co-retail space. I think the thing that joins all of this up is about placemaking and helping establish a new relationship between the residents of St Neots and the surrounding areas with their town centre. And I'm really keen that we tell that narrative, and not just tell it, but actually we've got to make that narrative. It's more than just telling the story. We've got to make sure that these constituent parts work together on a fundamental, practical level, because we're putting a stage in as part of the wider works. And so I guess that's just a general request over the next year. I think it's going to be quite a busy time for us all. And appreciate your support on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pitt. Now, I agree completely. We're not going to be able to bottom that out in one sort of evening's meeting of Cabinet, but absolutely agree with the points you're making. I think the level of interest in the tenders on the Priory Centre was extremely welcome. Similarly, as the report touches on, the certainty of confidence we have in a minimum of 3 contractors we're expecting to submit tenders around the town centre improvements as well is a measure of interest. That, given what was happening with the economy over the first months of our administration, not that the economy is looking better, but in terms of the construction sector in particular back then, this is an awful lot better than we feared may have been the position we were in, to have companies competing for business rather than us on the hunt for them. That improves the value we can get out of the project. It improves our options. We had excellent options with the Priory Centre, as you say. So I think that is extremely welcome in terms of our ability to continue delivering the project, the timescales that we've got in budget as well. And thanks for drawing attention as well to the, I think, valuable opportunity that we have taken to reuse some of the unallocated combined authorities money in different pots in order to add to what is happening in that sort of signature space in the middle of St Neots. So, as you say, the stage to create the opportunities of people using the public space in more ways, if not entirely new ways, which does absolutely feed into sort of our wider objectives around helping sort of support the renewal of the town centre through the economic challenges of the present period in particular.
Thank you, Councillor Wakeford. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased to see that this project for St Neots, or projects, seeing it come to fruition will be great. I think people have waited a long time, and it'll be really good, I'm sure. So just picking up on the other market towns, do we know the timetable for the projects there? So I'm thinking Ramsey, St Ives and Huntingdon. I know we've got a produce market planned for Ramsey in particular.
We do. They are varied in terms of the different projects in the different market towns. But the as you mentioned, the Huntingdon and St Ives allocations, parts of those have kicked off already. Indeed, the bandstand in St Ives is there already. I think there are sort of final installation works. But certainly over the course of the coming months, we'll be making some really swift progress on much of this. And as you say, in Ramsey, very exciting as well. By the end of July, we should be there in terms of the next stage of that project. So. Yes, there is work happening right across the district beyond St Neots, though, given the magnitude of the programme in St Neots, that's inevitably a significant part of our scrutiny and political focus.
Thank you, Councillor Wakeford. Any more questions or comments? In which case, I would simply say that I noticed that Facebook and St Ives seemed to be very abuzz with the new bandstand, which I thought looked very smart. So I'm looking forward to the programme of activities that will centre on that, and in fact in our other market towns as each of the projects come to fruition. Thank you very much, Councillor Wakeford. It's a lot of work ongoing, and please would you pass our thanks to officers who I know continue to work hard to make sure that we keep this moving to as tight a timescale as we can possibly secure. I believe, Councillor Wakeford, that you might be on for the next couple of items. So I'm hoping that I might get you to take us through item 4. Oh, hang on a minute. Have I got recommendations to make? So if you give me one moment, let me just check. I think it's simply an update to note the progress. Yes, I was going to say thank you. I'd closed that document and suddenly realised I hadn't checked that. So in which case, can we move on to item 4, which is the mid-term review of the housing strategy 2020 to 2025. Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. As you correctly note, you've got me for this and the next one as well. My apologies, so I'll up my pace, shall I? These are on aspects of housing. The midterm review of the housing strategy is a document we've decided to bring forward in the way that we have because there is an existing housing strategy until 2025, so we could just have updated on the 32 objectives in the current strategy. At the other end of the spectrum, we could have rewritten this entirely in view of the new corporate plan that the council's working to under our administration, but that would have been throwing baby out with the bathwater. So we've tried to strike a balance between those options, come down somewhere in the middle. So we've updated, retained some of the objectives, added a few, removed some of the duplication. We've taken advantage of the opportunity to acknowledge changes in the housing market and to link in with new policies like our corporate plan, and clearly, a strong reference to a climate strategy as well through our housing work. We've got the opportunity to take advantage as well of the latest census data from 2021 that wasn't available when the current strategy was written the year before. I know in lots of aspects of local government and the public sector, we're still tied to the data from the previous census, which is extremely out of date now for reasons that will be obvious to all. So hopefully this is a slightly more streamlined strategy review, which, as I say, still retains the best of what came before, and sets the sets the framework for our strategic housing work over the next couple of years of our administration. I won't take you through each section, interesting as they are. What I will do, though, if I can turn to it, is the discussion from overview and scrutiny. So we touched on scope to consider agricultural workers within key workers, as Pam kindly updated us. The definitions of key workers are likely to be replaced with essential workers by government, but we've got scope to identify different sorts of shortage demand as part of our housing needs surveys. And of course that references work, links to work underway, as Councillor Sanderson knows better than all of us, around reviewing work in the local plan as we move to a new one. We talked a little bit about the difficulties of tackling the challenges of under-occupation of social housing as a result of the nature of tenancies, but we talked about the scope for working with social landlords to manage situations as well as we can, while respecting the rights and tenancies of residents who have those already. We reassured councillors that the work on reviewing the disabled facilities grants that haven't gone up despite our housing numbers and needs going up over recent years is expected to take place during the course of this year. And again, I think I'll stop there, Chair, but happy to pick up any discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Wakeford. There's certainly a lot in the papers before us. Are there any comments or questions from Cabinet? Councillor Davenport-Ray?
In the appendix, the numbers go into older and disabled people. There's some quite staggering statistics here. So a 95% increase in the population over 75 we're anticipating, and thousands of housing with care, housing with support that we're going to require in the coming years. How do you interpret that data, and what do you think happens next now that we know that those issues exist?
Thank you. Yes, so this came out in discussion, if not specific questions, in scrutiny as well. I think the conclusion, well, multiple sources of data, in particular the Hearn report, the housing needs survey back from 2021 that we're incorporating reference in here, and as you make reference to, underlines the scale of challenge around housing in our district fundamentally. I mean, there's a sort of much longer conversation we could seek to have, but I think that underlines why we are trying to be strategic in terms of our prioritisation of work within the strategy, and underlines the importance of the work we're doing already to prepare, not that we need one yet, but in anticipation of the fact we will do to prepare for a new local plan, as well as Councillor Davenport-Ray and Councillor Sanderson and colleagues again are extremely well aware. But I think it's really helpful to draw attention to the scale of challenge. We're never going to be able to do enough, but it's certainly stimulus to do as much as we can.
Thank you, Councillor Wakeford. Any more comments or questions? In which case, Cabinet, you have 2 points before you. The first is to note the contents of the report, and the second is to agree the mid-term review of the housing strategy and action plan. Can I have somebody to propose? Thank you. Can I have somebody to second? Thank you. And can I have a show in favour, please? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. In which case, then we move on to item 3. So, Councillor Wakeford, this is you again. This is the First Homes position statement.
Thank you. Hopefully, last and simplest of the papers I'm bringing this evening. I said at scrutiny, this is a position statement, not a policy, and Pam was keen to kick me if I said the wrong term. I think that duty falls to the acting managing director next to me, because because the significance of policies, of course, is different in planning terms. But this is not without significance as a position statement. It's relatively straightforward, but principally it seeks to protect social rented accommodation where first homes may be built out across the district, rather than them being in place of the social rented elements of affordable housing. We have tweaked the statement as circulated in the Cabinet report ever so slightly, informed by discussion at scrutiny. So we were able to take the opportunity at scrutiny to confirm that the references to working in Huntingdonshire and employment that was drawn from the LGA guidelines was not intended to exclude and would not be used to exclude people who work in a non-employed way, for example, the self-employed. So we gave reassurance that the policy would be applied equivalently. We discussed the family connections element as well of identifying local connection criteria, and following a very helpful comment from the panel pointing out that the reference to adult children allowed the possible implication that the criteria didn't allow the deeming of a residence connection in the district if it was somebody's non-adult child that lived here, for example, after a family separation, if a former partner and children lived here, the concern was that might not be regarded as a sufficient local connection. There was scope for special circumstances, and the point underlined that all applications would be considered individually in the statement, but we've taken the opportunity to make reference to young children living in the area where they have access or joint custody arrangements explicitly to ensure nobody looked at the statement and feared that they wouldn't be covered in applying for first homes without even taking advice from us. We discussed as well how people working from home and employees of Hunt's businesses working from home outside the district would satisfy the various conditions, and we were able to give assurance that between the conditions around living in the district and working in the district, that those scenarios would be covered. And also we were able to update the panel that this isn't a purely academic exercise, because our first homes application is starting to work through the planning system, so there's no certainty around how that will pan out, but we are excited that there is work happening on bringing forward a development of this type of homes, which aren't going to be a massive part of the housing mix in Huntingdonshire, but add a route to ownership with sort of key worker and local residents criteria that supplements what's available in the private market. So I think this is helpful, and we'll of course pick it up more fully as part of the local plan review going forward to embed the principles in a more binding way.
Thank you, Councillor Wakeford. Did anybody have any comments or questions? No? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Wakeford, I think, has summarised that extremely well, and as we know, getting on the housing ladder is extremely difficult in this day and age. I quite like the idea of the restriction being registered on the land title and it not being more than £250,000, but I guess we're still reliant on that being picked up by the solicitor or conveyor or what have you. But am I right in saying we think this will be under the shared ownership will be the best mechanism to achieve this? And it would be, I think, around 10% of the shared ownership houses will actually be affected by this, unless I've interpreted it incorrectly, but it does sound very promising nonetheless.
Yes, so the requirements around maintaining some of the conditions here would indeed be in perpetuity in the deeds. There's scope for that to be waived after a couple of months if, for example, the owner, an owner further down the line couldn't find someone with a local connection to buy it, but that would be a requirement initially. So as I say, this isn't something that would automatically apply to affordable housing across the district. This is around how we would handle applications for first homes and which part of the affordable homes proportions we would count this within. And as I say, it's said in presentation, the sort of key judgment call is including it within, sort of treating this as if it was affordable ownership as opposed to affordable rent, which is what it is a route to. So I think there's a common sense in that.
Thank you, Councillor Wakeford. Any other comments or questions? In which case then, we are being asked to note the contents of this report and importantly to agree the first home's position statement. Proposer, Councillor Wakeford, thank you. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Hassel. Can I have a show of hands in favour to agree the position statement? Thank you, and that's unanimous. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Councillor Wakeford. I think that allows you to now take a breath. And I think the next item is the very worthy but very big report on indoor and built sports facility strategy and the playing pitch and outdoor sports strategy, which is not easy to say. But a lot of work involved in creating this for us. Councillor Taylor, I think this is over to you. Are you expecting anybody else to join you at the table? You might not be. I think they might be behind you.
I'll start, thank you, Chair. I'll start the report. They are the experts. And as you say, there are many reports, appendices in this. But yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm happy to present this to the Cabinet members. I have already presented to overview and scrutiny. So I'm not even going to say it again. You have just said it, and it is a mouthful. But the two strategies are a thorough review and assessment of the facilities and the pitches, which provide strategic recommendations in line with the population growth forecast within the local plan. Both of the strategies are endorsed by Sports England. One of the questions, people ask, why do we need these strategies? We need them to understand the current level of provision within Huntingdonshire across the public and private, education, voluntary, commercial sectors. This enables the current levels to be compared with the likely future levels of demands on the provisions. The evidence contained in the strategies can be utilised by Huntingdonshire District Council and partners and providers to sustain the correct facility mix and maximise financial funding across the district. I think the funding for sports is always something that is very hard to come by, and these two strategies are a perfect mix to help people understand what we need. If the Cabinet agree to the recommendations, we've got two recommendations tonight, then the strategies will be available on HDC website for all to have sight of and use. They're not just purely for HDC, so, stakeholders, new developments. They are a very, very crucial, two crucial strategies for our district. We have got some slides. Would you like to? It's up to you, or I can carry on. But you are better.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just to back up what Councillor Taylor's been going through, I just thought I'd give a bit more context because there is a lot of information in the slides in the reports, I'm afraid. So just to give you a bit more context, we'll just go through a few slides just to outline some more detail in case that prompts any more questions as Councillor Taylor will then conclude. So we have the next slide, please. So just a bit more, Councillor Taylor did touch upon this, but background to the study, we've not had an accredited Sport England strategy done since 2008. What was the playing pitch part of it? And there's two separate parts as we've gone through. We have undertaken some internal work in that time, but some of the developers have pushed back on some of that because Sport England are a statutory consultee on large planning applications where sports facilities are involved. So if they don't agree to what's going forward or may push back, then that's where developers have touched upon some of that detail and pushed it back against us as officers. And just for timelines, just so you're aware, obviously there's been a lot of work going on, but it went out to tender in December 21, and the contract was awarded in January 22 and started from there. So it's been a long process with the contractors. Next slide, please. So just a bit about the context of findings. Obviously, like Councillor Taylor said, there's lots around the needs assessments, and it's highly unlikely that any local authority across the country will have exactly what's put in paper in terms of needed. There's lots of national issues that we're aware of around affordability, around leisure, particularly around the swimming aspirations. And when you compare Huntingdonshire to other areas just locally, there's lots of differences across neighbouring local authorities in terms of how leisure and how provision is managed or how it's accessed in terms of like education provision and facilities like that. Next slide, please. So again, just sort of touching upon some of that local and national context. Obviously, some of our other neighbouring local authorities do have the strategies in place. A couple have just come up to renewing theirs. That's part of the process with having the strategy in place to continue to review and renew it at times, and that's in part of the recommendations. Some of the larger national governing bodies of sport have their own strategies as well that then sort of back up what ours will say in terms of like the Football Association, Football Foundation, Cricket East are just looking at theirs at the moment as well in terms of cricket facilities specifically, and they will pick up what's put in these strategies to put into their own as well. And also Sport England are looking to the government swimming pool support programme at the moment that Greg and his team have been looking at One Leisure in terms of for the district of that £63 million what's going to be available to local authorities and how we can possibly try and access some of that. Next slide, please. So hopefully you would have seen in terms of strategies, and they're split into the two. So we've got the indoor and the built sports facility strategy. Big needs assessments around that, but you can see the list of things that sort of covers around the swimming pools, sports halls, your indoor bowls, indoor tennis. And then you've got the other side to that in terms of the outdoor sports strategies. That's all your playing pitches, so your courts, your pitches for cricket, for rugby, for football, etc. Next slide, please. So some of the headlines, just to touch upon what sort of come out of the strategies. So for the playing pitch and outdoor sports, there was a mixture of shortfall, spare capacity and sufficient capacity. Current shortfalls across football in some of the youth, 11v11, mini 5v5. So we have lots of discussions with developers when we've got green space of what sort of makeup will look like. So this will help inform those decisions of what's needed in certain areas. We've got a shortfall slightly on 3G pitches, but we've got some of that coming on board, hopefully. A little round senior rugby, some hockey, the sand-dress pitches, netball courts and muggers. So there's certain areas that we can look at and that can support some of those discussions moving forward. And then with the indoor and built sports, as you can say, that we've got good supply of sports halls and courts. We're slightly under-met for demand, so there is a few that we need to look at, but there is some areas where, so like Alchemy Weald, potentially secondary school, hopefully coming on board will provide some of that shortfall. Swimming, again, we've got a good spread of facilities, but a good news story for Huntingdonshire is they're operating at near capacity, what means a lot of people are swimming and a lot of people are using those swimming pools. Obviously, then that does sort of lead to a small sort of deficit, so 0.7 of a 4-lane shortfall by 2043. And then health and fitness, just a current small shortfall of 300 stations, but it's not massive considering obviously how many gyms and facilities we've got. Next slide, please. So a bit more sort of council take on why do we need these strategies? So again, they're recognised by Sport England as a statutory consultee on planning applications, so they've endorsed them. They'll know they're in place and can use them when they're consulted as well on plan applications. They provide the council with comprehensive evidence base in terms of when we're having those discussions with developers. And again, it supports lots of other strategies. It's on that strategy bookshelf in terms of it supports the HDC corporate plan, it supports the upcoming review of the local plan, the place strategy, as we talked about placemaking, and obviously the climate strategy as well. So there's lots of where it links into those as well. The next slide, please. And then, as we touched upon, how will those strategies be used? Will we support, enhance the sport and physical activity agenda? So that participation, because if you've got the right facilities in the right places, it's only going to help support more people to be active and using different facilities across the district. Again, it's working with partners, protecting, enabling sports clubs and organisations, so supporting them, obviously keeping their facilities running, Section 106 negotiations, partnerships with town, parish councils, etc. And as we put within the recommendations, sort of produce an action plan as would be one of some of the next steps. So yeah, that's sort of a bit more of a context for you. Pass you back to Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Martin. Does anyone, well,
I was going to say,
questions
so are
first?
there any questions for thank you, Councillor Hassel.
Yeah, so firstly, thank you for the excellent presentation. It just helped me to digest or summarise the appendices there. I was interested in the swimming pool grants, and I was interested whether we know yet how you would be a preferred receiver of funds. It sounds like if it's based upon usage, that we're perhaps in a very good position. But whether any criteria have been shared yet.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start, but I'll let Greg finish. So the government funding is facilitated through Sports England. So they are the ones that will be facilitating it. We have been out, not me personally, but the officers have been doing a great job, and they've been fact-finding. So within our leisure centres, and also I do believe you've been to Salttree, haven't you, Greg? Yeah. So I'll let Greg take over from that. There is a lot of money in the government pot. I say a lot of money, but it's got to go throughout the whole of England. So once it wheedles down, we'll have to wait to see. Fingers crossed that we get something. But it won't be till around September.
Thanks, Councillor Taylor. So just to answer the question, we've been engaging with Salttree Swimming Pool. We've met with them a couple of times. We'll be meeting again shortly. We submitted, as per the Sport England guidelines, a fact-finding piece of work which went in about 4 to 5 weeks ago. And that was really for Sport England and the DCMS and the Treasury to really understand the true importance and how much sort of financial support the leisure sector required. And just recently, Sport England have updated their website to say that applications will open in July, with July into August, and then funding will be awarded late August, early September to the successful candidates. There's about £63 million available, with another small proportion available for sort of more energy management and how we can improve plant and mechanics around the leisure centres as well. So it's imminent.
So I guess that the criteria will be built into the application that you're going to make in July. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Once they will release the framework in terms of what their requirements are, and it will be usage. From my experience, it will be centred around usage, some financial information from us, and other ancillary information around energy management costs and sort of tariffs as well. So we've been engaging with other council officers and colleagues as well to ensure we're ready for that submission.
Thank you. That's a really thorough update. Thank you.
Councillor Pitt?
Thank you, Chair. And thanks to everyone involved in putting these strategies together. It's really encouraging. So with my community and health hat on, obviously, sport is such a key part of people's health, that's the word I'm looking for, and improving the quality of life for local people. I can't think of a more astute way of tapping into that key priority for us. I was at the Town and Parish Council Forum last week, and I was on a table with a group of chairs of parish councils, and it was really interesting talking to them about their own kind of aspirations for improving health and exercise with their residents. And I think all of them were from quite small villages, and what struck me was that they tended not to think of team sports, and I guess because they just didn't have that critical mass of very local people. And obviously that's just the nature of, if you're running a sports centre, leisure centre, they'll tend to be in the towns rather than the villages. But I'm just interested to know, I guess it's a bit of an open question, hopefully it's not too vague a question, but just in terms of the way this report is put together, it's very much based on the demographics and the data. But is there anything that we can draw out of this process to look at how we do that sort of behaviour change and encourage people to take part in more team sports when it's not necessarily on their doorstep?
Okay, yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Pitt. In terms of, I'll take your question in a couple of ways. In terms of supporting some of the sort of more smaller rural parts of it, within the strategy there's talks around sort of multi-use games areas, trim trails, outdoor gyms, etc. So there's lots there that can support individuals and people to do other aspects if they can't access team sports locally. Obviously, with a rural community, there is that aspect where you have to travel, etc. So there is parts in the report where national government bodies of sport have a sort of a minimum requirement of drive time, what their aspirations are in terms of each sport, depending on the size of the sport and the number of people that participate in terms of their sort of drive time to facilities, and that's taken into account in the strategies, and also takes into account cross-border as well, because obviously there's lots of facilities just across the border into some other areas where people might look to access that. And then sort of second part in terms of the health and the actions, I think that possibly might be part of the next steps when we look at the action plan and those recommendations of how we're going to use some of this information. So obviously the recommendations tonight is just to sort of endorse it and recognise that, and then we'll go away and do those action plans. So I don't know.
I think just to come in on Martin's point, which was well made, was that this strategy isn't just for HDC. This is for all other local sports clubs, external providers, planners, and so on and so forth. So, whilst we're asking for your approval to allow us to publish this to the local domain, it does allow sports clubs and other bodies to really go through this report, and if they feel strongly about investment within their parish or town councils, then this is the information that will then support and back them up when they talk to planners and other bodies about approval and investment as well. So this isn't just geared around HDC and what we invest in facilities and how we can improve. It's also allowing others to actually avail of this information to actually allow them to fund and get funding for their investment into their local areas.
Councillor Hassel?
I just want to ask a question. I mean, that's a fantastic point. And I just wanted to know how we're going to get that message out to those local football clubs, sports clubs, who can leverage this for Section 106 or whatever's happening in their vicinity.
Yeah, so part of the working group for the strategies, there's a number of national governing bodies of sports involved. So you have national governing body sport representations. So like you have Huntingdonshire FA, we have Cricket East locally, and then you have some wider ranging sort of that are based across the eastern region for some of the smaller sports. So there's lots of work that goes with them, and part of my team, the sports development team, we try and work with clubs to drive up participation. So recently some clubs have had some funding through small pots of like a Active Hunts funding to support some of their delivery, and some leadership qualifications to get sort of young leaders involved as cricket leaders, for example. One local club got some access to that. So there's different things that we do in terms of that development and support, and it will just be sort of spread that word and work with those national governing bodies of sport to sort of draw their attention to the work that's going on.
Excellent, thank you.
Is it on the same point, Councillor Taylor? Because then I'm going to come to Councillor Sanderson.
Sorry, Chair. I just wanted to go back to Councillor Pitt's point within the rural areas and team sports. Although running isn't a team sport, it is a group sport. It can be individual too, and it does pick up on running within the strategies, part runs and individual groups. So I think, running needs to be seen as a group activity as well, so we could really class that as a team.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. Greg actually really answered the question I was going to put, which is this just an HTC thing, or was it wider? And it clearly is a wider project, isn't it? It's for all sorts of groups to look at. And I hadn't realised this is a really thorough document, just where there are gaps in district. Local to me, I thought, okay, I wasn't aware that actually we had a deficit for certain sports and in other parts of the district. I just wondered, sports are very good, as Councillor Pitt said, for all sorts of reasons, but the mental health benefits are huge, aren't they? The social interaction, feeling better, within yourself, feeling fitter. Is there a way we can link into that through this at all? And just a couple of minor things. Running can be a team sport if it's relay, can't it? I mean, I'm no expert on running, but just thought I'd add that in. And lastly, I understand, Martin, you're going to be leaving HDC soon and joining East Cams. So just wanted to wish you well, and thank you for all your hard work.
I think just to answer that question, I think it's one of the points in terms of how we're going to use those strategies. That first bullet point on the slides in terms of the general having the right facilities in the right places will support people to be more active more often, is what we talk about in terms of, especially across the One Leisure sites, but it's community based as well. So if parishes are picking up and got those right facilities in the right places, to attract people. So if there's wants to be investment in an outdoor gym, for example, we talked to a few parish councils around that at the parish forum last week, around how they can get some outdoor gym in their local areas. It's only going to hopefully encourage people to go outside and join in that sort of activity, whether that's individually or with people as well. And obviously the Active Lifestyles team and a number of others do a number of different initiatives, and there's other providers that do that across the district that could utilise better or more facilities. So I think it is all joined up to answer that question.
Are there any more comments or questions? Councillor Taylor.
If you would indulge me, Chair, we did have a lot of comments on overview and scrutiny. There was 11 comments, so it was quite clear people were interested in these strategies. Albeit, you know, there was so much data in there. So there were a few questions at the time we couldn't answer. So Councillor Shaw spoke about the gymnastic drive time. So this was to do with where it was from, sort of over borders. So Martin, thank you very much for doing that, Martin. He sieved through it, and on section 8.3 of the Built Facility Strategy Need Assessment states all residents in Huntingdonshire reside within a 30-minute drive of a dedicated gymnastic facility. So this highlights that wherever you live in the district, you're in an acceptable reach of gymnastic facility, even if it is over the borders. Councillor Shaw also, he spoke about Hitchinbrook Sports Halls, just checking the quantity. Again, Martin picked it out, table 4.1, page 27 of the Built Facility Strategy Needs Assessment. It details that Hitchinbrook has 2 halls, one with the forecourt and one court with one. And I think it was Councillor Orban, 3.11, it was on the overview and scrutiny comments. Again, acknowledgement of running clubs. They, in the playing pitch and strategy and action under athletics, page 55, there is running groups, events. It's supporting all these running groups, events, England athletics initiatives like Park Run and anything that to do with all the running clubs. So it is acknowledged within the strategies, even though, you know, they haven't got specific areas to go, they are acknowledged.
Thank you very much, Councillor Taylor. And I listened to that debate and those questions, so that clarity is really helpful, and thank you to the officers. Can I say what a fantastic set of reports it is? Having been through neighbourhood planning and had the challenges of what was needed and where it was needed, we were relying on the earlier documentation. This new documentation, I'm sure, will help communities, and very much the theme and the conversations, as Councillor Pitt picked up in the town and parishes, is as they're thinking about the sort of needs that are ahead of them. And with the call for sites, we know lots of developers are potentially going to be suggesting all sorts of things that they might like to bring to our district. And the answer is, I suspect that these documents will help increase the shopping list and the wish list in local communities for things that they would like to see and would very much welcome and value. So really worthwhile and significant pieces of work. In which case then we have before us tonight, colleagues, the request to endorse and agree the indoor and built sports facility strategy and the playing pitch and outdoor sports strategy 2022-43, and then to recognise the strategic recommendations as set out within those strategies, specifically Appendix 2 and 4 and the detailed section in 11. So I'm going to take those as a pair if that's acceptable. Can I have a proposer? Thank you, Councillor Taylor. A seconder? Councillor Hassel. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much, in which case then we have endorsed and agreed them. Thank you very much to the officers. And Mr Gray, I personally have worked with you on and off over a long time as a councillor. Can we wish you very much good wishes for your new employment? You leave us, I think, after some quite long service. How many years have you been with us? 18 years, so that is considerable service. I hope we've got him on a long piece of elastic and that you may come back to us at some point, but we'd like to wish you well for the future. Thank you very much for your service. Thank you. In which case, colleagues, the next item on the agenda, we have a very long agenda this evening, is the Oxford to Cambridge Pan-Regional Partnership. And I think Mr. Morley is very kindly going to take us through this item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The report today is asking Cabinet to endorse our participation in the Oxford to Cambridge Partnership. And I just start by sort of reflecting. We've seen a number of items today that very much look at a sort of bold and emerging future about what we're trying to achieve as a council. But one of the things that hasn't changed dramatically over my time in local government is actually the geography upon which we make decisions and consider our best incentives over the long-term vision for our area. And I think the Oxford to Cambridge Partnership is one of the things that reflects that there are a number of things that we're trying to achieve that don't reflect medieval or Victorian boundaries, which largely dictates how councils are structured. So within the discussions that took place around the Oxford to Cambridge ARC and decisions that were largely informed around the funding of the East-West Rail proposal, which now has been split out from the Oxford to Cambridge Partnership, one of the key reflections that came out of it is that the decisions that are being made by global business around how they could best position themselves to access innovative skills and global markets were increasingly decisions that were either around positioning themselves in the Oxford to Cambridge corridor or alternately looking at foreign climes. So whether that was San Francisco or elsewhere, and there was a very real recognition that we weren't competing with neighbouring districts, we were competing globally for that talent, and there was a real combined interest across that regional geography around working consistently to achieve that. And the second key area was around the strong commitment across that entire area to environmental support and making sure that we were making appropriate steps to deal with some of the significant climate change challenges that this Cabinet and this Council has recognised. So pulling those two things together, and there's a real sense of actually we're trying to do two things at the same time, which is look for long-term inclusive growth that is environmentally sustainable and also improve the competitiveness of our areas as a whole. So out of that, a proposal has emerged, which is to work jointly across that geography in order to move those things forward, to maximise the opportunities for businesses and improve the quality of life as a whole, and really to be a strong voice for that corridor. That proposition has been put forward to the government and endorsed, and on the back of that, there's been the agreement to develop a regional partnership that unlocks an initial £500,000 worth of funding to bring forward an investment prospectus, which enables us to position ourselves globally, to access funding from elsewhere, and to start to develop that environmental programme, which will deliver some benefits for Huntingdonshire by working jointly and developing in conjunction things that otherwise we might have had to do alone. And in time, the commitment to be able to draw down £2.5 million worth of funding in order to support that work. Now, within that, there will be a commitment of funding from the council as a whole. That's £10,000 is the contribution that we will make to the support of that programme. There is no long-term commitment, so this is an opportunity to be part of that partnership and speak with a combined voice and at a scale for the corridor across the economic and environmental aspects. This is still very emergent. So again, as you'll see in the report, some of the exact detail around the structures and so on is still being worked through, but it does build on strong work across the partnership that's taken place so far. Chair, would you like me to reflect on the comments and feedback from Overview and Scrutiny?
If you wouldn't mind, please.
So some of the key sort of comments and feedback that we had from Overview and Scrutiny was very much to clarify the point that I made in my introductory remarks there, that the Oxford to Cambridge Partnership is not the Oxford to Cambridge ARC. There is no expectation here about housing growth or any of those other aspects that troubled a number of people in terms of the foundation of the Oxford to Cambridge ARC, and I can confirm there's no commitment in those areas at all. Councillor Alban raised a number of points which reflected some of the feedback I've had from some of our St Neots councillors, which reflected that real need to influence over into Bedfordshire and some of the commonality of interests that we've got with some of those councils to our west running up towards Milton Keynes and the opportunity there, which I think does reflect some of those challenges of historic boundaries which have been more challenging. So I think this does provide us with some opportunities to express views in those areas and develop some of our common interests. Councillor Shaw raised the point about that commitment on the £10,000. If at any point we decide that our interests are not best served by being part of this partnership, the opportunity to withdraw exists and is there. Sorry, I've just scrolled up inadvertently. Bear with me, I'm just scrolling through the 658 pages of the report. In terms of the benefits, I think I've outlined where I expect those to be, very much in that inclusive growth area, and also those environmental benefits and benefiting from the scale there. And ultimately, as I say, the detail is working through of the exact membership of those panels. We will be well represented within those. And even if we're not specifically serving on a panel, we will have the opportunity at both an officer and a member level for strong influence and for Hunter Initiative's voice to be heard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morley. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair. So I think like most of us, or many of us, I've had a difficult relationship with the Oxford-Cambridge ARC, and I was suspicious about the partnership. But with the announcement of the East-West Rail route this week, we've seen that the East-West Rail documents project a population of 44,000 people in the tiny village of Tempsford, which is just across the border. This week we've got a planning inquiry from Bedford Borough Council. That's Central Bed. So Bedford Borough Council are planning to build 4,000 homes in Little Barford, which is just across the border. And then you look down, you can see this kind of conurbation stretching down from St Neots down to Sandy and possibly beyond, based on East-West Rail. So we were nervous about the housing targets, but I guess that if you listen to the Chief Executive of East-West Rail, she describes it as an opportunity for sustainable development. So, you know, whether or not we have the Oxford-Cambridge ARC, we will get lots of housing growth. It's almost inevitable. That's the point of East-West Rail, and it's the point of being in the part of the world we're in. And whether we like that or not, we need to have a key role in those kind of cross-border negotiations. So when I was previously critical of Oxford-Cambridge ARC, now we're getting the railway anyway. I think it's really critical that we have to have a seat at that table, and we need to be able to influence people in a very visible way. So I support reluctantly support, I think, but I do support our membership of this partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Davenport-Ray.
I think the proposal before us should not be taken lightly. We're being asked if Huntingdonshire should join a partnership with region-wide, both in economic and environmental ambitions. And like Councillor Ferguson, I was certainly an ARC skeptic. And so I was intrigued when the new partnership appeared and curious what they might do. And I can see the benefits of working together at scale. But I'm also very wary of the pitfalls, because the consequences would affect so many local people and so much of our natural environment when it's applied at such a large scale. I see risks in the administration of the partnership. Historically, it's been organized mainly by the officers and leadership of Cherwell District Council. That council is now in no overall control, with disagreement among the council on the value of the scheme, and so I see risks in their leadership. This partnership and East-West Rail's projects are now separated by policy, yet they are intrinsically linked. The preferred new stations that Councillor Ferguson has mentioned at Tempsford, but also at Camborne, provide a geographic buffer from the existing settlements, and as he said, you know, the East-West Rail Company projects some pretty eye-watering increases in these rural communities around the new stations. So we have a pan-regional public transport project, which certainly has benefits in reducing carbon emissions, but it's clearly aligned with the pan-regional partnership's aims for economic growth. I'll be cheeky and quote a green peer at this point. Natalie Bennett has recently said, we don't need to level up, we need to spread prosperity across the country. And I completely agree. The economic aims of this partnership would further concentrate economic prosperity in a region of the country that, when compared with other regions, is already benefiting from a thriving economy. And this partnership is also moving forward without the participation of some of our peers in South Oxfordshire, Vale of White Horse, Buckinghamshire, Fenland, and East Cambridgeshire. So environment and economy, as Mr. Morley has said, they don't stop at a political boundary and pick up at another. And strategic working at this scale is difficult even when everyone agrees. So I have some concerns about how this venture will work given those missing pieces of geography. So the proposal before us is indeed, it's separate and distinct from the ARC that came before, but its published objectives and ways of working are different as well. But economic aims to grow the economy of the Oxford to Cambridge region have consequences. And those economic aims come hand in hand with the creation of jobs at scale. Rather than filling a local need for jobs, I believe these will be highly skilled jobs that attract interest from outside our region, which Mr. Morley has suggested. And the creation of jobs will, of course, require more homes for workers, again, at scale. And our council has worthy objectives to bring jobs and services closer to where people live. So this means that the economic aims of the partnership logically lead to the need for more homes at scale across our region. And this may not be the stated ambition of the partnership, but that is the logical conclusion. There is a limit to economic growth. That limit is defined by our planet and not by people. And the longer we delay in recognizing that fact, the more dangers that we leave behind for future generations. I have observed positive changes in this scheme. I'm happy to see the partnership already has a website. They've published when their board meetings are held. The minutes are available. This was a key failing of the ARC, and I think that they are on their way to resolving that. And I sincerely hope that this venture will find those environmental opportunities that can only be possible at scale. And if this cabinet is minded to join the partnership, I will continue to engage with that environmental work stream with those hopes in mind. But I currently do not have enough evidence for my concerns about the scope of this project to balance out the potential benefits for Huntingdonshire. So on this occasion, I will not be able to support the recommendations that are in the report before us.
Thank you, Councillor Davenport-Ray. I'm going to come to Councillor Wakeford, and then when we get to the end of the comments, I will perhaps sum up. Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. There's a lot in this report, though it's relatively brief, links to the broader history that we've touched on, and there's an awful lot in which Councillor Davenport-Ray says, and I think there's a lot in there that's insightful. We try to not be overly political, or at least not overly partisan in this place. I would say, though, if Lady Bennett, or does she prefer Baroness Bennett, has got that specific sense of an alternative to levelling up, she's obviously worked out what the government's original definition is, which is better than many of us around here. That doesn't mean we're averse to applying for levelling up funding grants as and when further pots of that appear. But I would say the Councillor Davenport-Ray flags the risks in getting this wrong, and in terms of the engagement with peers. I think, as Councillor Ferguson said, I think quite rightly, there are balances of risk here, but the bigger risk is not having a seat at the table and not participating at all in the opportunity before us, which, as we've said, is very different in scope, as well as we are in a different place in time, and in terms of the infrastructure developments in the district now as when the original ARC discussions took place. And I think I'd say finally the unarguable point around ecological limits, whether people are familiar with that sort of terminology or not, is clearly a point well made. But I think the key part of the economic and environmental linked value that, as I see this partnership as an opportunity to help capitalise upon, is an opportunity to build on the value that a lot of the really extraordinary world-leading businesses and organisations and areas of research in our pan-regional area can bring, which are not a zero-sum game. It's not a question of development here instead of development somewhere that might need it even more, though we are, of course, a mixed and diverse district and pan-regional council area. So I am optimistic around the opportunities that this may allow us to bring to our district, to the pan-regional area, but also more broadly for the economy and society that we work in. So I think that the concerns are fair and will be shared by some watching this as well, particularly people who were close to the ARC debate. But I think for reasons colleagues have set out as well, I'm certainly supportive of the proposal in front of us.
Thank you, Councillor Wakeford. If I can come to Councillor Pitt and then Councillor Hassel.
Thank you, Chair. Really interesting debate. I don't think I can disagree with anything that anyone said. So it's obviously a complex issue. I mean, I think my input might be slightly less sophisticated than others, but essentially we need more homes in this country. We need more homes locally. The cost of buying a house is extraordinarily high. And so I think anything that will increase house building, I think, is fundamentally, probably on the right side of good. And again, just to reiterate the point that I think these conversations are going to be happening. I've noticed every time I was at Oxcam ARC briefings and other meetings, it was really interesting how people talked about the cities along that route, and they very rarely talked about the market towns and the rural areas. And I think we've got a really important role to raise that issue, because otherwise we could easily just be overlooked from the entire process. So I'm really keen that noting the concerns that people have around the whole issue, I think it's important that we're at that table. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pitt. Councillor Hassel?
Yeah, like Councillor Pitt, I agree with what everyone says. I think some very, very sound points made. I guess the extra point I wanted to make was to really understand exactly how much influence that we're actually going to have over this. Yeah, in terms of do we genuinely have a seat at the table, and can we really make a difference? But I do accept Councillor Ferguson's point that if you're not involved, then you can't influence it at all. And with East West Rail being on our doorstep, it's going to be very difficult to avoid this level of development. But some thoughts as to whether we're genuine. I noticed that we're not on the we're not a member of the Shadow Board, for example.
Thank you, Councillor Hassel. Any more comments before I go to sum up? Councillor Mickelberg.
Just very briefly to say that I'm probably very cynical about this group. I suspect it will be a talking shop and nothing will happen. My fear is if we're not at the table, not listening to what people are saying, and it becomes more than that, then we may find ourselves at a significant disadvantage. So while I share many of those reservations, I would recommend that we are present, and if we decide that it is wasting a perfectly good Tuesday evening, but we might be doing something else in the future, then we extract ourselves at that point in time.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. This is getting quite feisty, actually, isn't it? Quite a good debate. And I have total respect for Councillor Davenport raised concerns and view on this. And as Councillor Pitt said, we do need to build more houses. We all know that. We recognise it. But of course, this isn't just about house building, is it? It's beyond that. But I'm inclined to agree with colleagues who say that we probably do need a seat at the table with this. In fact, we should have a seat at the table. So I think it's a good investment and use of our time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson and Councillor Taylor, for completeness.
I can't be the only one not to say anything, can I? No, I totally agree with Councillor Davenport-Ray. Totally see your concerns, but the risk of not being there, the risk of not knowing what's going on, especially over the borders, is something that worries me. And I think I totally get what people are saying. We, not just a seat at the table, we need our legs firmly, robustly under that table. And we are here, Huntingdonshire is here, and we are part of it. We're not just a sideline, we're part of it.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I'm very pleased that you spoke last, because you said so many things that I think sums up the nature of the conversation that we've just had. I too have wrestled with this. I understood the genuine concerns about the predecessor ARC, and the passion and how emotive the responses were from individuals, from action groups, and the genuine concerns that people expressed. This is different. It is at the beginning of a new phase, a new way of thinking about things in terms of producing that evidence base from which to then build potential for whatever comes next. I also believe that we should have a seat at that table, that we should be influencing. I think we should reserve our right that if it really isn't turning out in the way that we have been led to believe that it is intending to turn out, that we have the ability to review our position. We do need houses, we do need economic growth, but it needs to be the best, the right scale, the right place. It has to be sustainable. It has to make the best in terms of the benefits that Oxford to Cambridge region potentially can offer for our residents. Has to be good and beneficial for Huntingdonshire. Has to have sustainable and joined up travel. I could go on. My personal wish list is endless. I'm trying to be very optimistic and forward-looking with this. But should we have concerns as this unfolds, if you are happy tonight to agree that we will participate, then I think the answer is we reserve the right to bring this back as we find out more. And if this turns out not to be heading in a direction that is comfortable, and we believe that we cannot sufficiently influence it to produce the outcomes that would be acceptable, then we have the right to reserve our position. And I think on that basis, then that's how I would like to put the proposition to you and those recommendations. So, Cabinet, that before you tonight, you are being asked to recommend to Council that we join the Oxford to Cambridge partnership. Apology, it's not going on to Council. Sorry, apologies. It was an amended supplement, and I have not opened the amended supplement. Thank you very much, Mrs. Jablonska, for keeping me in line. So we are being asked to recommend that we go on to join the Oxford to Cambridge partnership as it becomes fully recognised and funded by government as the pan-regional partnership. And the executive leader is appointed as the council's representative, and the executive leader, in conjunction with the managing director and corporate director of Place, be provided with the powers of appointment and delegation. In other words, that we have a seat around the table. I think Mr. Morley wrote down knees and legs firmly under the table to make sure that that's fully understood. And it's on that basis that I'm asking that you accept this recommendation. So I'm happy to propose. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Wakeford. About to call you Mr. Wakeford. Sorry, sir. Councillor Wakeford. Can I have a show in favour, please? Can I have any against and any abstentions? I think everybody's had an opportunity to vote. Thank you very much. In which case then, thank you very much, Mr. Morley, for a comprehensive report on quite a difficult topic, so thank you. That moves us on then to the performance reporting part of the evening, and I'm very pleased to invite Councillor Ferguson to update us on the corporate performance report for 2022-23 quarter 4.
Thank you, Chair. So about a year ago, as a new cabinet, we sat in this room and I presented the 21-22 outturn report, which is basically the school report card for the previous administration. And back then I was, straight after an election, I was forced to reluctantly admit that the previous administration had done a decent job by the people of Huntingdonshire. We have had, as a new administration, plenty of opportunities to drop the ball. We were a new administration, we had a new executive leader chair, we had a new and largely inexperienced cabinet, we didn't know back then, but we now know we have a new interim managing director, and of course we had to deal with the cost of living crisis, energy crisis, and double-digit inflation. So it gives me great pleasure to present the 22-23 outturn report that I think demonstrates quite clearly that we've taken that decent poor performance that we inherited and improved upon it. So for the indicators where it's possible to compare with the previous year, we were better in 13 out of 17 indicators, which is 76.5%. Of the 4 measures in which performance did not improve compared to 21-22, 3 were affected by unavoidable external factors. Services met and exceeded the majority of the targets in 2022-23, and the highlights include the following. So aligned with our corporate objective of improving the quality of life for local people, PL14, the number of attendances at One Leisure Active Lifestyles programme increased by 23% over the previous year, and PL15, the total number of One Leisure admissions is up by 20%. With regard to creating a better Huntingdonshire for future generations, PL19, I think this is quite incredible. We didn't actually meet our target on this, was an amber target, but we delivered 456 new affordable homes in 22-23, which is 46% higher than the 311 homes developed in the previous year, and is the highest number reported for this measure in the last decade. I think the previous maximum was 440, so that's an outstanding performance, even though we didn't quite meet our target. PL 22 and 24, also a bit of good news from the planning team, who've been under quite a lot of pressure in recent years. The percentage of major planning applications processed on target was higher than the results reported in 21-22, so 87% this year compared to 81% last year, and a higher proportion of household extension applications were processed on target compared to the previous year, 91% in 22-23 compared to 81% in the year before. And with regard to delivering good quality, high value for money services, this is outstanding as well. PL12, less than 1 in every 2,000 bins was missed in 22-23. Although unfortunately one of those bins was mine, but we'll forget that now, which is 21% lower than 21-22. And PL27, we completed 72% more food safety inspections than the year before, and we've met and exceeded the requirements of the Food Standards Agency's recovery plan. So it would be easy to claim all of these as a political victory, but of course it goes down really to the consistent hard work from more or less the same team of officers and staff as delivered the excellent outcomes the year before, but delivering even better ones. So I think we should take this opportunity to thank them. It's also worth noting that in terms of comments from the overview and scrutiny meeting, there was some discussion about things that it should be amber and should be green. There was some discussion about the quality of the report, which is difficult to interpret, and also some discussion that not all the measures had targets. So we're not talking about this today, but in the same overview and scrutiny meeting, we also presented our targets for next year, and I was pleased to report then that all 27 indicators for the performance indicators will have a target next year, which is, I think, important. And for each target, we'll also have an intervention level, which will define whether the indicator is red, amber, or hopefully green, along with the reasoning and the kind of scientific data for doing that as well. And I think also we saw a report from John Taylor and Dan Buckridge reporting on how we're going to present that information in the future, including time series, which will make everything a lot more easy to understand as well. So, I think it's a very pleasing report. And well done to everybody for all the hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Are there any comments or questions from Cabinet? Sorry, Councillor Ferguson, I do apologise. No wonder you're both looking at your nameplates and wondering whether I've read them correctly. It's been a long day. Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Wakeford.
There is much too much in here to pick out further specific examples from to complement the achievement of the staff involved, and so I won't do that because we'll be here all night. But I think, as Councillor Ferguson says, it's an extremely strong report. I think it reflects a performance we can be proud of, particularly in light of the challenges he rightly draws attention to. Who would have thought we'd quite be in this place for all manner of reasons, sort of a year and a couple of months ago. But I think that's excellent, and the fact that the most searching, challenging questions at scrutiny were questions to which we'd actually already got the answer and done the homework on, isn't a reflection of them having been silly questions. Quite the reverse, reflection of the fact that we are reassurance that we're on the right lines in terms of how we are thinking about targets and performance going forward. And as we've touched on previously, and it's worth underlining again, in order to make the targets more useful, we are deliberately opening ourselves up to greater risk of reds and yellows, and that is something we can do from a position of strength, as is set out in this report, and there is no shame in being more ambitious, even if it means we then are focusing scrutiny on areas that we want to improve, because that is ultimately doing better for our residents than if we've just got a whole sea of greens, because we're sort of resting on our laurels. So I completely support that direction of travel, and support Councillor Ferguson in being the front man for the flack that will inevitably generate at quarterly reporting, but we are all right behind you, even if at a safe distance.
Are there any more comments or questions? In which case, Councillor Ferguson, can I thank you very much for the very detailed report, and can I also support your thanks to the staff? I think one of the things that comes through resoundingly is that the achievements that the corporate reporting show would not be possible were it not for the fact that we have fantastically hard-working, dedicated staff in every aspect of the work that we deliver on behalf of residents. And actually, I hope that the message that Mr. Morning will be able to, I hope, take back to staff, and that I might wish to reiterate when I come to the staff meeting, is one of thanks and acknowledgement of their efforts and their achievements. And I hope that they will be able to look at this sort of reporting now and going forward and feel rightly proud of the things that are achieved. But I also thoroughly endorse the fact that the reason for having these kind of indicators is so that we can monitor what's working well, we can adjust what we might wish to tweak, and we can equally decide if something isn't doing what we expected and address it or change it. And actually that's the important part of the performance reporting. It isn't a pat on the back for us as an administration, it's being focused on what we're here to do, what we're trying to achieve, and being clear at every turn whether we're actually delivering what we aspire to. So thank you very much, and thank you to the officer team that have produced that report, but importantly thank you also to the staff of the organisation who've helped us deliver it. I don't believe there are any recommendations other than that we are invited to consider and comment on the report, which I believe that we've done. So, Councillor Ferguson, unless there's anything else from you, can I thank you very much? So, in which case then, the next item is to look at our finance performance report for 22-23, quarter 4. So this is Councillor Mickelberg, and Ms Sutton is coming to join us at the table, I think, to take us possibly through some of the detail if needed. Over to you.
Yes, I am fortunate to be joined by the subject matter experts this evening, which saves me a job. I did say that I wouldn't cover this, but it has occurred to me that I probably ought to be a little bit more formal with this. It's been mentioned at overview and scrutiny and informally, and that is just around why are we draft at this stage. Our 2021-22 audit delays continue. This is the financial year that completed before the election, before any of us took this position. So it was the previous administration's budget or financial year end. But it's really important because lots of people, when they see an audit delay, put 2 and 2 together and get 76 and suggest that there's something wrong with the finances. There is nothing wrong with the finances. There is no suggestion of any impropriety from the previous administration or from the finance team or from this administration, from what the auditors have found. They started late. They were permitted to start late by central government. And they have been slow to report and slow to give their conclusions. And as a result, we are suffering delays. And that is all it is. We are suffering delays. So that is to reassure everyone around this table and all of our residents across all of the district that things are in good order. It is just the formalities of reporting. Unfortunately, this also means that next year we are going to suffer the same. They will start late and they will finish later.
And may I just ask a question at this point, I think just for clarity, because that was really helpful. Is this unique to us?
Okay, so no. In our immediate area, I think it's only Cambridge City that have actually had audited results for that year. We appear to be second in the race. I think one of our peers haven't even started the audit for that year yet. More than one. Okay, there we go, more than one. So we're not in a terrible position, but certainly it has impacts because proper reporting on the year in progress is difficult because we haven't had closed books for the previous year. So we want to work as hard as we can with the auditors to ensure that these can be closed off so that we don't have this continual fuzziness around the edges. However, I think that the team have done such a good job and we are in such a strong position from a reporting point of view that we can make sound assumptions and therefore we can be confident in our reporting even with that enforced fuzziness.
Thank you for that clarity.
So I'm here to talk to you about the 22-23 accounts for the year ended March 23. The council's net expenditure for 22-23 was 20.9 million, an underspend of 476,000 against our budget of 21.4 million. Underspends arose because of higher interest rates received on our bank balances and higher prices received on our recycling credits. External factors which benefited the council, but also to a lesser extent factors which are within our control, such as leasing out our excess office space, our procurement savings and managing our establishment, our staffing costs. However, it wasn't all good news. As has previously been mentioned, we have a cost of living crisis. Our cost of our electricity costs went literally through the roof, and the impact of which was felt particularly hard in our leisure centres. Cold water swimming isn't universally accepted. Temporary accommodation costs were also significantly higher than the subsidies we received from central government, and they don't look like reducing in the foreseeable future. As I said, like the rest of the country, we had to bear high increases in our inflation. It's very fair to say these are challenges which have continued on into the new financial year, and it's wrong to say I'm looking forward, but I'm keen to report how we're doing against the Q1 performance, which won't be for a while yet due to meeting timetables. If I look at capital expenditure, that was very low compared to the approved budget. We had an approved budget of 42 million, including carry-forwards from the previous year, and yet we only spent 10 million. There are a variety of reasons for this. Sorry. Any better? Good. So I start again. Capital expenditure was very low compared to the approved budget of 42 million, and we only spent 10 million. A variety of reasons for this, including delays due to COVID. But of the 32 million underspend, we've carried 18 million forward to 23-24, relating to identified expenditure or projects with agreed plans. A review of the remaining projects has resulted in previously approved projects, not being carried forward. This is because the approved spend is either already included in new projects approved as part of the 23-24 budget, or there's no longer a need for the expenditure. Bear in mind, some of these projects were carried forward from years pre-COVID, and either the opportunity doesn't remain or the needs of the district has changed. If there's no current plan for a project and no activity or funding is in place, we haven't carried that forward. One capital expenditure we did make was that the funding for the A14, which was originally planned as being £200,000 a year over 25 years, we liaised with the Department for Transport and agreed an upfront sum of a significantly smaller amount. Our initial expenditure with them was due to be 5 million. We had £1 million transferred to us as well, on the cessation of Cambridge Horizons, which meant that we owed Department for Transport just over £6 million. We did a one-off payment of £3.7 million, which has cleared all our future requirements. That has benefited us because we were able to get a good discount factor on the payments. As I say, rather than paying out 6 million, we paid less than 4 million. And it also removes the burden on our future revenue budgets. So that gives us a little bit more headroom going forwards.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mickelberg, were you coming back in?
Yes, I was just going to cover the points made through overview and scrutiny. Those are all listed in the reports that we have in front of us. There was one that we had to take away, Councillor Jennings, who joined us for a briefing on all of the financial documents the week prior, had omitted a question in his pack, which then threw us a curveball, which was why had St Neots One Leisure shown a saving on utilities, which did seem slightly counterintuitive. On researching that, the easiest way of paraphrasing it is that they had over budgeted for the cost of energy, and therefore when our costs came in slightly lower than they had budgeted, they therefore showed a saving. Which, if I got that the wrong way round.
Can I just clarify that? It was a saving against their forecast, not against their budget. So when they had reforecast in Q3, they had forecast higher energy rates than they actually ended up incurring. So that was a saving against their Q3 forecast and not against their budget.
Thank you. I think that might be one of the rare pieces of news where actually the bill was less than we'd anticipated. Thank you for that. Really helpful report and very easily explained for those of us who perhaps look at the figures and really benefit from that interpretation. Are there any questions or comments that Cabinet would like to make at this stage? I know you've had a number of these briefings, so a lot of this is very familiar territory. No? In which case, then, if I just check the recommendations to make sure that we've followed them. Yes, if you'd like to come back in, please do.
I just wonder whether it might be beneficial just to give a bit of an update on some of our, on the timings of the publication of the final report.
Please do.
So I just want to take the opportunity to say we should have published, obviously, the report I've given you is not our draft accounts. Our draft accounts should have been published by the 31st of May. Like all of our neighbouring councils, we did not publish our accounts on the 31st of May. The reason for that is that it's a personal responsibility of me as your Section 151 officer to make sure that those accounts are correct. Because we have not completed our 21-22 audit, we do not have finalised opening balances, so therefore I could not publish accounts which I knew to be correct. So therefore we have not published them. Until we get the audit sign-off of the 21-22 accounts, we cannot progress further with that. And we are urgently pushing our auditors for an update on when we will get those figures.
Thank you for that clarity. Then can I ask a question then? Would there be anything that would give us cause for concern, given that you're not able to publish? I'm assuming that as the 151 officer, were you to be concerned that you would have advised us that there is something we should be vexed about?
Absolutely. There's nothing I can see which I have concerns over. And the delay to the 21-22 account is merely now down to restatement of reserve balances and making sure the balances are in the correct places on fixed assets.
Thank you very much for that clarification and that reassurance. I think the real challenge here, isn't it, that some of this is not directly within our immediate control. I appreciate that's probably extremely frustrating. Can I thank officers for their patience in getting us through this process, which is somewhat onerous but completely necessary. So thank you very much. You have before you then the report. You've been invited to comment. Is there anything else anybody wishes to add then I've opened the wrong recommendations. I just want to make sure there's no other recommendations. So consider and comment on the financial report, which you've done, to consider and comment on the capital financial performance, which you've had the opportunity to do. So there's no further recommendations other than that, in which case, can I thank you very much for your hard work and the work of your team and your patience as we go through a process which is not quite as fast as we might wish, but thank you. In which case then, we move to the next item, which I think might be Councillor Mickelberg again, but I think it might be Mr. Colbert coming to the table to join us. This is the Treasury Management Outturn Report for 2022-23.
I'm not sure I can actually add anything in other than to thank Oliver for taking his seat and for running us through this report.
Thank you. Good evening. This is the Treasury Management Outturn Report for 22-23. It's a standard report, the one that we do every year. It summarises the investments, the borrowing, some of the capital outturn performance indicators as well. If it's okay, what I'll do is just run through a few main points from the report. The investing in the year was, we used mainly money market funds and DMO, which is the government deposit account. In Table 6, I mentioned that we'd got deposits at the end of the year with government, including local authority. In fact, it was just government. It was all DMO deposits at that point. We had rates at the beginning of the year of 0.8%, and at the end we had 3.8%, so the rates had increased quite considerably towards the end of the year. During the year, our long-term borrowing fell. We repaid, Places for People repaid a loan to us. We then in turn repaid the loan that we had to PWLB to fund that. So our borrowing is less by about 4 million at the end of the year. Our investments and repayments of investments were nearly 400. So although the net position was about 2 million up by the end of the year, that was actually about 400 invested and 398 coming back to us. So there's quite a lot of activity there. The CIS products, we've got a yield on those of 7.5%. So that's still giving us a good yield even compared to the current interest rates. During the year, we also got a yield of 3.98% on our property fund, which is something we hold with CLA, which is something we're looking to hold on long term as well. So that's another good return. And also towards the end of the year, I investigated some ESG products, which are environmental, society and governance products. About a week later, banks started to fail in America. So unfortunately, we sort of discarded those for the moment, but we might relook at those. We've got two products there. Barclays, which is quite a good one because we've used those before, so we know Barclays quite well. And Standard Chartered as well, which is another good rated bank. So those are things that we hope to get into at some point, but I think at the moment it's not something that we want to get into while interest rates are still on the rise. And also overview and scrutiny had raised the issue of continuity if something were to happen to me at a cabinet meeting or something. They'd asked for continuity, so one of my colleagues is starting to do some training, although he's already got some experience. So we're looking at that at the moment. And that, I think, is about it.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Davenport-Ray.
The last time you came to see us, you were talking about ESG and how you were going to go away to learn a bit more. So I'm excited to hear that you've identified two products that you think have merit. What is it about those two products that you think are particularly attractive? And once the market is indicating that is a wise move, how much might you consider investing in that type of ESG deposit?
Yeah, our limits at the moment are for 2 million. So we had a discussion with Link, who are our new Treasury advisors, and one of those, the Standard Chartered product, was something they advised us to look at. but we'd only be able to put 2 million with them when we do invest. Barclays have got, both of those products have got something where they fund projects that are related to ESG things, and they give you a report back, so you can tell what's happening to your money. I think the Barclays one is called a green deposit account, so that again is another product that they will report to you on a quarterly basis about what they're doing with that money. So they're the kind of things that we're interested in, and it's more than, I suppose, our investments at the moment. We place money with people, and we're not entirely sure what they're doing with it. It doesn't sound too, but in an ESG way. But with that, we certainly would get some reporting back about what they're actually doing with those products.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pitt.
Thanks for this report. I'm interested to know with our commercial investment portfolio and the sort of the market value of that portfolio. Just looking at Table 8, and perhaps you can just help me understand it fully. It looks like the Rowley Centre in St Neots has increased significantly in the value. I'm just interested to know the sort of story behind that. And then the other movements seem to be relatively minor, but that one stood out.
So I didn't get a chance to run through the overview and scrutiny questions. That was a question that was raised, and it is entirely down to valuations. So it's also one of the things that's holding us back bits of the audit as well. With particularly the St Neots properties, when they were valued last time round, you had the... let me restart again. When you think about the valuation for a commercial property, it's based around how much rent you obtain for the property. So the last time the valuations were done, big discounts were being given out because of COVID, which then had an impact on what the valuation looked like. We changed valuers 18 months ago, so they've come with a slightly different perspective to things as well. Rents therefore increased at the same time that valuers took a new perspective at some of these things, and therefore the book value of some of these assets now looks very different to how it looked previously. I think with a number of these things, if you think about long-term bonds, for example, actually the price that you have to state that it is valued at that point in time has to be the market value as if you sold it. However, if you're not selling, if you're not crystallising that, actually it doesn't matter. If you've got a 5-year bond, in 5 years' time, it will yield whatever it is that you bought it for at that point in time at the start, even though your valuations have gone up and down. While the valuations might look slightly strange, actually it doesn't really make any difference to the day-to-day aspect of what we're doing and how we're working. All of the loans are set for long-term fixed interest rates through the Public Works Loan Board. And while it makes a book difference and maybe has a little bit of an impact on aspects of what it is that we're trying to do, actually it is, to the greater or lesser extent, relatively academic.
Albert.
Sorry, yeah. I was just going to say for our budget, it's the rent that the rents that we get from the properties rather than the value. You know, if we were a company, we'd be looking at the values and worrying about them if they were going down.
Thank you. And Councillor Davenport-Ray?
I think the particular properties that Councillor Pitt is referring to have been vacant for some time. So does the lack of rent affect the book value?
Only at the point that it's valued. So I think one of the things, or one of the comments that has been made by colleagues previously, is just better insight into the commercial performance of our property portfolio. That's one of the things that we are talking about, and we will look to give a greater visibility into over the course of the next few months. Those properties, yes, there are a couple that are vacant. The nature of the rental terminations, despite the properties being vacant, hasn't financially disadvantaged us. Equally, where we do have other properties that are vacant, we've taken the opportunity to use the vacant period to perform required refurbishments, and in doing so have offset our NNDR, so our business rates, to the local councils there, which has therefore helped us fund part of those refurbishments as well. So where we do have these vacancies or vacant periods, The team are managing them well to our financial advantage and making sure that those properties, when they're ready to be let again, will be able to be let at the top end of the market rates and expectations as a result of the work that has taken place. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Was there anything else from overview and scrutiny, seeing as I dived straight into the comments and questions? Was there anything else that you wanted to highlight? You might have covered everything that you wanted to draw our attention to. Mr. Colbert, I think is. Oh, you can fight over who would like to speak first.
One of the councillors asked a question about the borrowing, whether it was all fixed. So I confirm that the borrowing is all fixed.
Thank you. Councillor Hassel.
I just wanted to ask hopefully a fairly simple question in view of interest rates that have been going up on a month-by-month basis from the Bank of England as to, is that a good thing for us or a bad thing for us?
I'm not sure that's a simple question. There's a whole report in that, I think. We've got fixed borrowing, so yeah, so the interest rates going up isn't affecting our borrowing. I'm only thinking about investments and borrowing here. There could be a wider aspect to this, I suppose. But yeah, on the investment side, the theory is that we'll end up at the end of the year with more interest income. But I suppose the implications of the interest increases are that inflation might be higher than it would be, sort of thing, or it's sort of wider into the way it feeds into the wider economy might have another effect somewhere else. But yeah, in short, our borrowing's fixed, so our interest we're paying out is going to be fixed, and our interest coming in is going to be higher.
Yeah, thank you. And presumably we should be able to de-risk our portfolio a little bit because you can, you go to more deposits rather than more risky investments. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, none of our investments would be termed risky if we were in an investment institution, they'd probably take more risky investments than we do. But we're investing in money market funds which are AAA rated and DMO, which is guaranteed by government. So, but yeah, the rates in the DMO have gone up considerably, like everything has, and they're now more competitive with the money market funds. So we have, if you look at the figures in the table, we've moved a lot of our money from money market funds to DMO, partly because the rates are now more competitive in those deposits. So yeah, there is a trade-off there. We can get a better rate with a DMO now than we could comparatively with other investments. So that de-risks our investment portfolio as a whole.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? And Councillor Hassel, if that's the easy question, don't ask a hard one, please. In which case, can I thank you, because that's we've been invited to comment and to recommend this report to Council for consideration. Can I have a proposer for recommending it to Council, please? Councillor Mickelberg, a seconder. Councillor Davenport-Ray, all those in favour of the recommendation to take it to Council? Thank you very much. Mr. Colbert, can I thank you very much? I hope that your person who is shadowing you in turn has a shadow behind them, because I've come to the conclusion I think you are all irreplaceable. But I'm pleased that if I work on the principle that if you have a plan, you never need it. So thank you very much for the hard work that you've done in helping us work our way through what I still find is quite a complicated subject. Thank you very much. In which case then, Cabinet, we come to the last report of the evening, which is to receive the minutes of Hingingbrook Country Parks joint group held on the 21st of April. Councillor Taylor, it has your name alongside it. Are we simply to note the report?
If that's okay, Chair, because I know it's been a long evening, so I'll be really quick. It's very brief. We met and I love the little group. It's great. It's a little joint group. The Kickstart scheme has now finished. It was a government initiative. However, there are now two apprenticeships which the park is benefiting from. But I'm really quite hopeful that they are benefiting from the apprenticeship. I have met one of them and they seem to be as well. So all the seasonal work in the park was completed within the planned timescale, so well done to all. There's ever increasing support from volunteers, and that was praised within the joint group. The investment project, when the works take place on the Countryside Centre and the car park, etc., the intention is to keep the park open with diversions in place wherever appropriate. There will be a food trailer, so they've actually purchased a food trailer. I'm quite looking forward to see. I've seen pictures of it, but I'm quite looking forward to seeing it. So they've acquired this to allow for refreshments to be purchased throughout the durations of the work. So yeah, looking forward to that all coming up and everything hopefully getting together, and we'll see some really great benefits in Hitchinbrook Country Park. The next meeting is the 14th of July, and we're hoping after the meeting, we've suggested, because we just sit in the Countryside Centre and we've got all that beautiful park out there, so why not go out and let's go and explore it. So after the meeting, that's what we're going to do. So if anyone wants to join us on the 14th of July, come down.
Thank you very much, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Davenport-Ray.
I wanted to add one more update there about Hinchinbrook Park. So we've been able to use some of our biodiversity funding to fund what's called a Groundworks program at Hinchinbrook. And this is exciting because it brings together a lot of the different themes that are important to us all. So this is a way for job seekers at Hinchinbrook Park to be learning skills in countryside management, to be building habitat for different species in the Hinchinbrook Park, and then to walk away from that with a qualification that they can add to their CV. So hopefully trying to build green skills within our community, but on our own asset. And I think it's been very successful so far. We're now looking at where we might be able to implement that at some of our other parks as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, it's really encouraging to see the work that the park is doing, and I'm pleased that the joint group are continuing to work effectively to support that work. And I know with great interest some of the new things that have been happening on that site. So looking forward to seeing it shortly. Thank you very much. In which case, that brings us to the conclusion of this evening's meeting. Can I thank all those who've joined us as officers, all those who've joined us online, and the officers who've joined us in the room this evening. Thank you very much, and we will see you at the next meeting. Good evening.